Hello, Dr. Nick. How you doing today?
We are living the dream in Pennsylvania. Rick, how are you?
I'm okay, Nick. But, last time on the podcast, I was sharing a little bit about the trials and tribulations of doing a presentation, and I think I might have mentioned that I was having some back problems, and so Nick, I've been thinking about this, and I'm just considering just going ahead and getting my spine removed, completely
Okay.
removed.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm on board if you can back this up with some science.
yeah. No, I just feel like it's holding me back.
I was waiting for the punchline. Very, very, very good. Very
No, okay,
good.
Nick. So I've been spending a lot of time at the mall lately,
Ooh,
and
okay.
because Toby's Taekwondo, which I also talked about, I think a little bit last time, is in the mall, and so I was in Dunham's, a sporting goods store, and I was looking for some camouflage pants, but I couldn't find them anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Yet again.
Uh,
What did one ocean say to the other ocean?
Nothing. It just waved.
You got it.
Yeah, I know. All right, let me get more serious.
Ah,
People are already tuning out because of the bad dad jokes before they start tuning out. No, I have been spending a lot of time at the mall, and every time I go to the mall and I'm with Holly, I always bring dollar bills, and we pay for the because of my back. I'm being serious now. We pay for the vending massage chairs. You know what I'm
oh
talking about?
yeah.
The vending
Yes.
massage
Yep.
chairs. And so putting in $1 will get you 3 minutes. So I bring in one for Holly and one for me. I love the vending massage chairs. They are just, oh my gosh, the full rollers, and they squeeze the bottom of your legs, and it's just
Yes.
fantastic. I look forward to that several times a week when we go for Toby's Taekwondo for pickup.
Do
But
you put the feet in
Nick,
the boots? Is that
what's that?
do the feet fully go into the boot things, or are they just the calf part?
No, it's just the calf part. It kind of
Yeah.
squeezes the calf, and yeah, but they're still pretty intense. Yeah, like I said, you get like three minutes for $1, and it's like 15 for $3, something like that. At any rate, Nick, I got a trivia question for you. You know the massage chairs I'm talking about, so let me see if you can kind of make an educated guess here. So
Okay.
I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great if I had one of these massage chairs at home? Right. So I didn't have
Oh
to
boy.
feed it all the time. I just could use it constantly at home because it
Uh
feels
huh.
so good. So I started thinking, how much is it actually? And so I went to massagechairsonline.com and looked up how much one of these chairs would be just to kind of buy it outright. So, Nick, here, I'll give you a multiple choice of how much you think it would be. Okay. Is
All
the
right. I
answer,
gotta.
you ready?
Yep.
All right. Is the answer A, $800,
No.
B, $3,000,
Too low.
C, $8,200, or D, $12,500?
I'm gonna go with C. $8,200.
Oh, that's a very good guess, Nick. But actually, $3,000. Three thousand
What?
dollars will get you a massage chair online, and they're trying to sell them because they want you to kind of go ahead and put them in malls and airports and things like that and get passive income once it's paid off, right?
Right.
But yeah, it was $3,000, and I started thinking, that's not bad. I mean, that's actually doable, right? It's a nice massage chair for $3,000. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to have this
I-
conversation with Christy at some point. Yeah,
Is
convince
there
her
any
that we need a
chance they have
massage
any of
chair.
those on TennesseeLowBid.com or
Oh,
Tennessee
that's true. I could
auction?
check out the auction sites.
Yeah, you never know. You might get lucky. Some Facebook Marketplace or a low
It's
bid auction.
possible.
See,
It's
I really
possible.
would have thought it would have been a lot higher expense wise, just because I've seen, and I can't think of the name of the store now, but you would always see them in the mall.
Sharper
They had like
image?
Sharper Image. Yeah, they
Yeah.
always had like super expensive,
Yeah.
attachments to make them a chair, a massage chair, and I always feel like it was several thousand, but it does make sense. You're right, the passive income, so you have to have a price point you can get in on, so you can actually break even at some point if you're
Right. And
using
I
it.
was thinking, about the mall. I mean, we have a nice mall. It's Bradley Square Mall here in Cleveland, Tennessee. But they have a lot of massage. I think there's at least 8 massage chairs in there, and I never see anybody in them because nobody's ever in the mall.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, malls are just kind of such on the downhill slide for the past 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
ever since kind of the online retail has taken over. But I wanted to ask you a question, Nick, because I think that's probably true of malls all across the United States. But I'm wondering, because you're right next to King of Prussia Mall, and I'm wondering if there's an
Yes.
exception there because it's so huge and well known, and is really a destination in and of itself. So do you see that same deterioration, or is it still pretty vibrant?
No, the King of Prussia Mall is the one exception to all the other malls. In fact,
Okay.
I mean, you've got a ton of malls right nearby: Plymouth Meeting, Exton, Berkshire, Coventry, and they've all pretty much gone out of business almost
Oh, wow.
completely. You know, like about
Wow.
5 years ago, a lot of these mall spaces started trying to turn into like a little bit of what you said, you know, renting to karate places,
Yeah.
classes, like, you know, places, gyms.
Yeah.
Then they tried to do restaurant locations and clubs and things like that to try to turn it into, you know, an event type place. So the only thing really left at the Exton Mall, for example, is Round One, which is like a Dave and Buster's.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
King of Prussia Mall is the exception, although the turnover in stores at the King of Prussia Mall has been pretty significant.
Okay.
And what you see a lot of, and we don't go there often, but you know, the girls and Denise still live right by there. A lot of the pop up stores, and the
Oh,
K-pop, the Korean pop culture stuff is huge right now. So
okay.
it really does feel very bizarre, kind of in the mall atmosphere. But yeah, King of Prussia is still number two, only behind Mall of America in size, and they keep
Yeah.
going back and forth competition wise. So the only thing King of Prussia hasn't done is gotten into like the water park and amusement park thing, sort of like, you know, Mall of America obviously has
Yeah.
multiple thousands of square feet of rides and things like that. King of Prussia Mall is still all store based and restaurant based, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, that's great that it's still vibrant and doing really well. I mean, that's encouraging to me because I remember growing up as a kid. I mean, gosh, it wasn't long ago on the podcast we were talking about Saturday morning cartoons, right? The kind of a thing in the
Yep.
past that, boy, there was value in that we kind of don't have anymore. And I remember that from growing up right in the '80s. That when it was something to do, it was a destination. Go to the mall on a Saturday, right? I
Yes.
mean, that was and get
Yeah.
some time to kind of get out, kind of leave mom and dad and go kind of explore, look in Spencer's Gifts and the posters I probably shouldn't have. So to
This is
just kind
true.
of explore. I mean, that felt good, and I think we kind of probably are missing something with the decline of the malls across the United States.
You know, while I agree with that statement 100% because it's true, also looking back now that I'm a grumpy old middle school principal, the old malls were just Friday and Saturday night hangouts for those middle school kids. And
Hmm.
there's nothing more challenging than like a Friday night football game with the middle school kids at the high school football game. And you know, I'm sure the proprietors of the malls would love to have some of that business back, but I'm sure they don't
Yeah,
miss
the
the seventh,
problems that
eighth, and
came
ninth
with them.
graders.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I
That's a
just
good
think
point
about
too.
me and my friends, and we were pretty tame, but we still acted like idiots, you know, trying to impress girls and, you
Yeah,
know,
sure.
doing that whole bit there. But those were good times, man. Woolworths, oh my god, Herman's, one of the big sporting stores, Kitty City at the mall.
Mm.
Oh, still remember Kitty City, Lionel Kitty City, and the video game section. Oh, okay, we
Toys
could
R
go for
Us and
hours.
and the
Yes,
they had kind of the setups right of the scenes that they would set up kind of on the end caps. I loved going to Toys R Us and looking at all their kind of displays when they had all the action figures or all the Transformers set up in an action scene. It's so cool.
it's
Uh,
just not the same.
no, it's not. But you know what's interesting, Nick, is I've mentioned on the podcast before, I've had the opportunity to travel overseas a couple times to do some teaching. And so when I went to Germany and when I went to Quito, Ecuador, we went to the mall. It was just one of the places, when we had a little time off, I'd go to the mall with the other professors. And it was like the 80s because it was packed. They were
Wow.
absolutely packed to the gills, these malls in those two locations at least. And it just reminded me of growing up and everybody's just at the mall. So yeah, and I guess probably because maybe they don't have the same kind of online shopping opportunities that we do here. That maybe that's part of the reason why. But it just kind of reminded me of the days growing up in packed malls. Made me miss it.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, you know, kidding aside, there is something to be said about that type of community and the fact that there's not as many places for those kids to go. The same kids I'm referencing, those seventh and eighth graders,
Yeah,
it's so okay. So the mall's not an option. What do you do? Not every
yeah,
community has a community center or something that's like wholesome
yeah.
for kids to do, and a lot of it just becomes isolated online where we're not seeing
Mm,
anything, which is
hmm.
kind of sad too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hmm. Well, hey, enough about malls and me, Nick. What's been going on with you guys?
We just came back from a fun camping weekend. We actually did two camping weekends, and well, we call it. I say camping. It's glamping. I mean, you know, we have a camper. We're not roughing it. And some of my teachers who really do camp like to remind me of that whenever someone says camping. So we'll make sure I say glamping,
You're not putting
just to be
iodine
sure.
tablets in the water to make it drinkable and that kind of thing. Yeah, you're
Correct. Yeah, we don't need solar stills when there's a drought.
right.
It's we're not dealing with any of that
Yeah.
nonsense. In fact, I'd like to have the air conditioning as low as possible so I can it's, keep my creature comforts of home the same. But
Sure.
anyway, we did Gettysburg 2 weeks in a row.
Oh wow.
2 weekends ago, we did with Danielle's parents, so they had a weekend in the camper with us. And this past weekend, we took the girls back, and obviously Gettysburg, the home to the historic 3-day battle during the Civil War, which many say turned the tide. But there's so much in the area, and the story of Gettysburg, as my one history teacher likes to say, is really about what happened afterwards, and how the town bounced back and the history that followed. So Sharon Jackson, who's one of our 8th grade history teachers, she actually has written pretty much all of the educational curriculum for the 3 main organizations and the Gettysburg Historical Society. I'm getting the name wrong. It's like the Ed Foundation. She heads all that up. She does all the creation basically for all of that. And we had a chance both weekends to see some of the different museums and exhibits that they've helped create.
Oh
So,
wow.
we had a super special tour guide, probably learned a lot of inside tips that not everybody knows. And for me, a lot of it's just the historical. We like movies, right? We're the big Star Wars movies, the drama. So for me, just going and seeing like the Sherfy House, for example, which still has all the original exterior from the bombardments during the battle, like you're looking at cannon marks in the brick and bullet holes on the lower part of that house. The train station where Lincoln arrived in November to give the Gettysburg Address, and the door to the train station is still the original door that Lincoln walked through. So you're like, wow, this is the same door Abe Lincoln walked through. So just so much, cool history, and then so much to do in town as well. So went to a couple really cool candy stores, as I sent you guys some pictures of the Yoo-Hoo candy bar.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the one store actually had a variety of different sodas. They had ranch dressing flavored soda, peanut butter and jelly flavored soda.
Oh my.
Pickle flavored soda. Very, very interesting,
wow.
eclectic selection of things. But anyway, so a cool couple weekends camping in Gettysburg there. And then we're looking forward to, I guess, what will be our last camping trip of the year, coming up in just a few short weeks, about 6 weeks, where we'll be traveling. We'll be traveling south, and you'll be traveling north, and we'll meet about halfway to visit your daughter at college and see some football and have some fun camping experiences.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that too. That's going to be a blast. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be a good test run for next summer, which we'll be telling the listeners all about, coming up there. And we should probably, when we get to it, have an opportunity, kind of like Abe Lincoln's cross-country train tour, where people can meet us on our camping excursion out west.
If we have the full itinerary kind of given out in advance. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, while that's also extremely dangerous and potentially could get us all killed, obviously.
We can think about that one.
We get ambushed on the side of the road against little things like that.
Nick, question for you, real quick about your weekend. Bella and Talia, are they big history buffs? Do they enjoy that, or you kind of have to pull them along to see the value?
No, it's their game for anything, which is always fun, but they're not like huge history buffs. However, it's such a cool place, and they've never been before, so it was definitely a good experience. And at this point, they're both learning a little bit about that time period, so they've got a little bit of context, like that historical area. Talia was most upset by the 5,000 horses that were killed during the 3 days of battle, which is pretty spectacularly crazy to even think about. And then also, like, when you look into the horror of it all, what was left behind, you could actually smell the decomposition, July, so it's very hot, 40 miles away in Harrisburg. Wow. So imagine being in Harrisburg and being able to, having to. And then, the horses and the wildlife that was killed, they were able to, pile up and burn essentially. But, the human casualty was a more serious situation. A lot of bodies had to be buried in shallow graves. There was a lot of rain.
Wow.
Just such a nightmare for the town that kind of got left behind. And again, so much of that story is about what happened after the battle. You know what I mean? Like these
Right.
two forces, converge in this place and then they all leave. And what a lot of people also don't know is that after it was all over, the couple years later, the Civil War was over, Gettysburg applied for several different relief funds from the federal government, which had made a good bazillion dollars, because war is, big money, and got denied all of it. So, they asked for help and for funds to rebuild and to take care of a lot of, the damage that was done and didn't get anything.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of, and basically it was like, well, this is war, just kind of what happened. So
Wow.
really amazing to look at the resiliency of the town too.
Mm. Wow, it sounds like you got, again, some good insider information with that tour. That sounds phenomenal. So that's
Yeah, at some
fantastic.
point, well,
Yeah.
at some point we should have Sharon on the show and just do like a
Oh, yeah,
history
that'd be
episode
great.
and talk, talk Gettysburg and stuff because it's amazing. Like she's just an incredible wealth of knowledge and super fun to hang out with too. She
Yeah.
came out to
Hmm.
dinner with us with Mr. and Mrs. B, and then we did a little cookout when the girls were up too. So we got to
Uh,
hang out and spend some time, which was cool.
that's just awesome. Awesome. So much fun. That's awesome. Thank you, Nick, for sharing. Nick, let's
Yeah.
go ahead and transition because you've got an amazing blog as you're continuing on with your 16 keys to effective leadership. And we got started with a couple weeks ago. And so take it away.
All right. So this week we're going on to keys 5 through 8. So we're going to do every time we'll have my blog until we hit the 16, we'll do 4 of them. Yeah, usually right around there. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But again, effective educational leadership is crucial for creating a thriving learning environment that fosters student success. Over the past 25 years, my experiences, along with those of my amazing colleagues, past and present, have identified the top 16 keys to success in ed leadership. Here's 5 through 8. People first. Placing people first is a vital aspect of successful leadership, as it underscores the significance of valuing and supporting those who contribute to an organization's achievements. Research published in the Journal of Organizational Behavior has shown that when leaders prioritize the well-being, growth, and satisfaction of their team members, they create a positive work culture that fosters increased employee engagement and performance. By putting people first, leaders not only demonstrate empathy and compassion, but they're also investing in the long-term success and sustainability of their organization. In the education field, this sometimes means weighing the pros and cons of decisions that might be in the best overall interest of kids, but could compromise our teachers' professional staff. It also means putting our ego aside as a leader to do what's best for everyone. As the wise sage Alan Watts once wrote, the ego means putting, or I'm sorry, putting our ego aside. As the wise sage Alan Watts wrote, the ego self-constantly pushes reality away. Or in the words of Albert Einstein, more the knowledge, lesser the ego. Lesser the knowledge, more the ego. Number 6, you're only as good as your last decision. This is a quote by one of my former assistant principals, Frank Dardine. The quote, you're only as good as your last decision, underscores the importance of continuous reflection and learning in personal and professional growth. It serves as a reminder that one's reputation and effectiveness are shaped by the consistency and quality of their decision making. Research published in the Journal of Applied Psychology suggests that leaders who frequently evaluate their decisions, learn from their experience, and adapt their approach accordingly are more successful in achieving desired outcomes. By embracing a mindset of continuous improvement, growth mindset, individuals can cultivate resilience, maintain high performance, and develop a strong foundation for future success in their respective fields. However, there's a more devious meaning to this. People have short attention spans and even shorter memories. You can make 10 amazing decisions in a row that benefit everyone, but when your 11th decision is a dud, well, you're right back down at the bottom of the barrel, wondering how you fell so far so fast. Which brings us to our next one, which is laugh all the time. Do not take life too seriously. You'll never get out of it alive. Laughter and humor play a critical role in effective leadership as they contribute to a positive and engaging atmosphere within an organization. A leader who embraces humor demonstrates approachability and relatability, making it easier for team members to connect and share their thoughts openly. Humor has been shown to alleviate stress, boost morale, and enhance creativity, resulting in increased productivity and overall well being. Furthermore, leaders who use humor effectively can diffuse tense situations and facilitate conflict resolution, maintaining a harmonious work environment. Ultimately, incorporating laughter and humor in leadership fosters a collaborative and supportive culture that encourages growth and success for all involved. Finally, for this week, number 8, don't bring a problem without a solution. Solution oriented leaders are known for their ability to inspire and guide their team towards overcoming challenges and achieving success. Going back to that Journal of Applied Psychology again, such leaders foster a proactive and innovative mindset within the organization, encouraging team members to identify potential solutions rather than dwelling on problems. Remember the age old quote, admire the problem? This approach has been linked to increased employee engagement, productivity, adaptability, and it empowers individuals to take ownership of their work, contributing to the organization's growth. By focusing on solutions, leaders can effectively navigate challenges and drive positive change in their respective domains. In the end, you can't do everything alone. You need to work with people who are solution driven. Model this for your people, and you'll find yourself working smarter, not harder. And that is today's blog.
Nick, when I was reading through these, my thinking was, I love these, but I kind of almost wish we had a whole episode for each one, kind of like we've done with the developmental assets, because there's so much meaning here that we could expand upon and discuss on each one of these, and maybe something we want to consider at some time, because we could spend an hour really on each one.
Yeah,
for sure. We're going to shortchange some of these. I certainly have a few reactions to a few of them that I wanted to mention today, but yeah, each one of them is just so valuable, just such amazing information and reminders, I think, for all of us in leadership roles and leadership positions. Let me start with the first one. So put people first, right? And you actually started this a few weeks ago with the first one, which was put kids first, I think, right? And now we've got put people first. And I guess my question is, that seems very intuitive, right? Put kids first, and then consider everybody else kind of around the situation. Well, consider the people first. And so my question is, what gets in the way? Because we would all say, oh yeah, of course, that's what we do. We put people first, but people don't. We don't put people first. So what is it that sometimes gets kind of priority other than people or other than students? Where does it get messed up and fouled up? I wonder if you have any thoughts, and I have one, but I'd be curious kind of if you have any examples.
I would definitely go back to the 2 quotes that I included in the blog, because they talk about ego. And I think more than anything, ego gets in the way. We spend all this time as whether we're the teacher, planning lessons for students, if we're the administrator planning a calendar or activities for teachers, et cetera. When we find out that people didn't like that idea, or it's not met with the same excitement that we expected, that can be a blow to the ego. And I think a lot of times we'll make, as humans, just in general, I think we make decisions that cater to our ego as opposed to being willing to take the critical lens and turn it on to ourselves, essentially. So I think it's hard to overcome the ego aspect, and that goes back to Star Wars and a million other quotes, that we've talked about over the weeks. The ego constantly pushes reality away. That's the Alan Watts quote. So it's setting that aside is kind of what I would say is the biggest piece there. And in this specific example, can get in the way of really making rational decisions, because you might know something is good for kids, but if that one thing is going to turn off all of your teaching staff, then it's not going to be good for kids. And you have to either find a way to get different buy-in or a different idea to make it be more appreciated so it can do that. So that I would lean towards ego, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the one that jumps off the page for me, right? Is ego, it's pride, and for me, sometimes I think in the helping profession, it's a bit of a hero complex, if I'm being quite honest. It's just trying to do everything possible to fix, to heal, to be the superhero in a kid's life with the mindset, I'm doing what's best for kids. But really, really, It comes down to people getting outside of their lanes to do something that's not their role or responsibility. I think that happens sometimes in the helping professions. And give me some examples. So in the helping professions, what we ought to be doing regularly and consistently is educating people about our specific roles and responsibilities, because they're very unique and differentiated across the helping professions. For example, right, the lay person, or just a parent may not understand that a school counselor does not do a diagnosis, right? No, nor are they
Yeah.
delving into do trauma resolution. That's not their role or responsibility. And when a situation occurs with a student that's requiring a diagnosis, that's requiring a medication, that's requiring some trauma resolution, right? That school counselor has to be willing to say, I'm going to do a good referral, and a referral that works, that makes a connection to get the kid the support they need, instead of saying, I'm the only game in town. I've got to figure out how to do this, and then kind of going outside of their scope of expertise just to provide something, you know, because it's what's best for kids. But really, I agree with you. It becomes an ego issue, right? Or a bit of a hero complex. No, stay in your lane, do your job, and do it well. And then when help is needed outside of your lane, get help and support. And again, part of the job in the helping professions is educating people so they understand and have reasonable expectations, whether that's a school counselor or whether that's a therapist. A parent may not know, well, I'm going to refer to a therapist so I can get medications for my kid. A therapist is not going to prescribe medications. They can't do that, right? So you're going to need a child psychiatrist. You're potentially going to need your pediatrician. You're going to need somebody else you're going to need a lot of different people in a lot of different professional roles in order to support kids. And so, yeah, that's the big one that came to mind for me. But the other one that comes up for me, Nick, that I've been talking a lot about lately, because we're going through an accreditation process right now with our counseling program at my university, is I think sometimes people kind of trick themselves or fool themselves into thinking they're doing what's right when really it's something else driving, and sometimes that's ego, and sometimes it's something else. Let me give you an example here. You can imagine two different school counselors, since that's my profession. So two different school counselors, one of whom approaches their role at working with kids as an opportunity to evangelize for their religion, because that's what's best for kids. So I'm going to find a way to evangelize, to make disciples for kids. I'm going to find a way to do that in a public school setting, because that's what's ultimately going to be best for their kids and save their soul for eternity. You can also imagine another kind of school counselor who has an atheist or agnostic standpoint, saying religion is toxic. And so I'm going to do what's best for kids and make sure they understand that religion is not something that's going to be helpful for you in your life, and role model that, and potentially even self-disclose and talk about that. Right. Both of whom would use the excuse that they're doing what's best for kids, doing vastly different things. But I don't think in either case those people are doing what's best for kids. I think what they're doing, instead of putting kids first, is they're prioritizing political or spiritual ideology. And you could call it ego, Nick, right? As you already said it, but it's putting an ideology or worldview before actually trying to do what's best for kids. And I see that from time to time. And I think it's problematic. I don't think public
Mm-hmm.
schools, public education is a place for evangelism. Certainly not direct evangelism, and those are the people who are more likely to get in trouble. But I also don't think it's appropriate to have that same person kind of come in and have a different person come in and kind of push against or push out the importance of religion in some students' lives. Neither one of those are appropriate, right? That's not our role to impose our worldviews and our values. We can own them, we can have them, we bring them with us, but it's not it's outside of the scope, and it's really against our ethical codes to impose those values or those worldview on our students.
Yeah, that's the two great examples on completely different sides of the spectrum that essentially have the same impact. And we're talking about service professions, in particular public schools. Uh, Obviously, I can't really say it better than you did, but on the same token, there are service industries as well that operate outside the public sector. And I think the consumer themselves has to be aware of what some of the, the mindsets and the predilection of those things might be also. A lot of times, I learned early on in the principal role that you really do have to dig deep whenever an opportunity comes up for the school, especially fundraising opportunities or gift giving opportunities, to really see what's behind the organization there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it only takes a 2 or 3 clicks of the Google search to see there might be something a little bit more insidious or
A hidden agenda, maybe.
hidden agenda there.
Yeah.
That could be
Yeah.
played. But those are good points for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, the other one that I wanted to make sure I talked about was the having the sense of humor, laughing all the time. I love this one. And I just think, yes, I just want to put exclamation points all over this one, because it's well, for lots of reasons that you pointed out, but it's such a uh, selfless profession. We've got to enjoy it. We've got to find enjoyment in the moment rather than just kind of long-term goals. The day-to-day grind has got to be something that's happy and enjoyable. And I think finding ways to laugh is a great advice, and something we ought to look to do every day for sure. But I guess my question is this: how do you do that? Because and I know it's a silly question, maybe, but I find humor to be difficult, especially in kind of a public education setting, because so often humor can be offensive, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we offend people when we use humor, or it's inappropriate. What's kind of being laughed about. And so what's a strategy there that you use potentially to make it appropriate and it fits and it's real and not too corny, or is corny good? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, you used a word there that does not describe me all the time, which is appropriate. It being inappropriate tends to be more of my default setting. So I guess the first thing whenever you're developing or using any type of humor or planning something maybe ahead of time, I always like to say, will I get in trouble with HR for this, or could I get in trouble with HR for this?
Okay.
That's a perfect example, of a bad decision would be Michael Scott, episode 2 of The Office, season 1, the diversity training. And,
Oh my. Yeah.
I mean, actually, that really speaks to almost every point of leadership
Ah,
here, between ego and, laughing and everything else.
yeah.
But I think I think it's twofold. I think part one is, you have to inherently have a sense of the platinum rule, which are the people that you work closely with, which is do unto others as they would want done unto themselves.
Hmm.
So you're thinking about what someone else might find humorous, not just what is humorous to you.
Yeah.
Which, that takes you got to have some empathy work and some compassion to put yourself in other people's shoes. And then the other piece of that, though, is it's not so much about, I think, humor. It's more about not taking everything so seriously,
Mm.
because, again, it's that whole, you go back to the quote, don't take life too seriously, you're not going to get out of it alive. That's true. And if you can look through a lens that says, we've only all got just a limited number of days spinning around on the big sphere here. How important or how serious are the things I'm stressing about? Is
Yeah.
there a way to laugh or have more fun with this? Now that doesn't mean you should never be serious, but you can also be serious and have a good time while doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I find, our school in particular this year, we're on one of the warning lists for subgroup achievement and some other things that the data that goes back as far as the pandemic. And while we've had to tighten things up and do some things a little bit more intentionally, doesn't mean we still can't have the same amount of fun. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
there's still an opportunity to enjoy what we're doing and find joy in what we're doing. So I guess that would be my answer: is it's not just about laughter, it's also about adding the right degree of severity or seriousness, and also trying to really have a perspective on what's important, what's not as important maybe, and the fact that we're all coming from it from a different lens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that's great wisdom, Nick. The other thing that I've seen you do over the years exceptionally well is, as opposed to making fun of other people, you kind of there's self-deprecating humor. Is you kind of poke fun at yourself, and that's I find that to be a good approach, right? That I'm not worried about offending others. I'll defend myself, and that's
Right?
yeah,
Like, as long as you can offend yourself without offending anyone else,
yeah,
then sometimes you got to be even careful with that, because some
yeah,
people will take offense to
yeah,
whatever characteristic of yourself you're making fun of. So
sure.
But yeah,
Sure.
it's the same. It's, whenever you look at a situation where a lot of time people will say, like, what's one of the best things you can do in a parent meeting? Or one of my close colleagues today said they saw an advertisement for a training called "How to Deal with Parents." Right off the top, that is that is destined to fail, because anyone who titles a session "How to Deal with Parents" has already got the wrong idea about what a parent relationship in a school is supposed to look like, right?
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
already setting the table a certain way, depending on just how you phrase things sometimes,
Yeah.
which, can be pretty telling as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just so appreciate this, and I think it's the one again that kind of jumps out maybe most to me, because I think it's so needed and so lacking, is not taking things so seriously and being able to laugh, even if you are taking things seriously, being able to laugh. And it's tough work, and if you're serious the whole time, man, burn out quickly. So yeah,
Yeah, and these professions, right? The helping professions, number one cause for leaving is burnout,
yeah,
and across the board. I saw a study the other day with nurses, um, you know, uh, basically illustrating the same types of thing that teachers, administrators, and people in the education field are complaining about burnout from. Which it's just like, wow, it's everybody's feeling it, that works in the helping professions.
yeah. Mm.
Mhm.
Nick, are there either of these other two that you want to take some time and talk about, or
No,
what are your thoughts?
other than I just think that there's good wisdom in the solution oriented leader piece of "don't bring me
Yeah.
a problem without a solution," in that we know as leaders we're always supposed to listen, right? That's a constant. Like, you gotta uh, hear someone out. A lot of times they don't even want a solution; they just want to hear. They just want you to hear them. But also, when you're actually talking about situations that will have a future or need for resolution.
Yeah, I got it now. I don't know why I lost your audio. I'm sorry. Did you pause? Okay, I'm sorry. Just lost you. I had to plug and unplug. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I guess, maybe somebody's listening and they think the counter to that might be something like, yeah, but that wouldn't feel as cathartic to bring a solution for my problem. I just want to complain. Well, then do it to somebody else, I guess is what I would say, right? Or write it in a journal, but don't bring that to your principal, until you're ready to talk about solutions. If you just need to vent, then maybe kind of be able to differentiate between I need to vent because I'm upset versus I need to kind of talk about something and find some solutions to a problem that we're having. So, yeah. Has empathy, sensitivity, we're just talking about that, and friendships.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook.
Rick and Nick's Excellent Adventure.
And as we move on to this week's two assets, numbers 33 and 34. Hard to believe, Rick. We're almost at number 40. We're just about through our list. Just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
mid-30s. We're making a lot of progress.
So 33 is interpersonal competence. Young person has empathy, sensitivity, and friendship skills, Number 34 is cultural competence. Young person has knowledge of and comfort with people of different cultural, racial, and ethnic backgrounds.
Yeah, Nick, I want to jump in and talk about the interpersonal competence, because this is kind of bread and butter school counseling kind of thing. This is what school counselors are doing most of the time. If they're not doing career counseling, they're probably helping students gain interpersonal competence. It's one that we can kind of help equip kids with this asset through school counseling programming. And there are lots of good resources out there. One that comes to mind is a free resource. There's lots of good resources on castle.org. That's social emotional learning and literacy. Lots of good resources there. We use curriculums across K-12, but particularly elementary. Second Step is a very common SEL curriculum that folks use. And again, there's lots of other ones that you can use out there. Many of them are free online, which is great. School counselors don't always have to spend a bunch of their budget, what little budget they have, and money. There's lots of good free resources out there as well. But one of the ones that is a for pay one that I'm really a big fan of is called Altitude is Attitude. And this is a social emotional literacy curriculum across K-12, and this one has been put together by Nick Vujicic. And Nick's an amazing, inspiring guy. Who, I don't know if you've ever seen any of his YouTube clips, Nick, but Nick was born with no arms and no legs. All he has is what he calls his little flipper, his little kind of that he uses to operate his wheelchair. And he's born in Australia, so he's got that cool Australian accent. And he kind of travels the world inspiring people about his story and what he's gone through and how he's kind of persevered and been resilient despite the obviously difficult circumstances, situations. And to watch some of those videos, I used to use those videos quite often teaching undergraduate psychology classes. And to watch him interacting with kids is just amazing, as they can identify with him because they can imagine themselves, no arms, no legs, and what that would be like. And just such an inspiring person. And he's put together a great curriculum that relies heavily on YouTube videos that he's put together, but lots of videos that he's put together to provide inspirational messages and the importance of kind of knowing yourself and being able to kind of understand other people's emotions and then use that influence to make a positive impact and positive difference. And funny story, Nick, a few years ago, Christy and I were with the kids at Pensacola Beach. And Nick's written like 3 different books, and I've read them all. I'm a huge fan of Nick Vujicic. And so I'm out in the Gulf swimming, probably about 30 yards out into the water. And I just look back up towards the kids up on the beach. And here I see Nick Vujicic kind of on his wheelchair, like rolling across, the right at the edge of the water. And like my mind is racing, like that's my hero right there. And I yelled out, Nick, as if he's my best friend. I yelled, Nick, you inspire me, is all I could think of. And he looks over at me, he just kind of nods his head, and he just keeps on going. And I'm thinking, yeah, that was pretty dumb. I feel stupid now, but I didn't know what else to say, and I couldn't run in there. So anyway, I was feeling dumb the whole day. The next day, we're back out on the beach and sitting there, and he rolls across again right in front of us because we're on the beach this time. And so I get up and I said, Nick, I'm the idiot who was yelling at you from the water yesterday, and I'm Rick Albright. And I just introduced myself and had a decent conversation, not yelling at him from the water. He was very kind, very nice, yeah, real pleasant to talk to. We had a good conversation. And then even the next day he came by with his wife, and they met Christy, and we got to meet his wife, lovely lady, and they got beautiful kids. And he's just such an inspirational guy for sure. And so he's written some great books that I highly recommend to anybody working with kids. And again, that curriculum really is fantastic. So he's a guy I think I've mentioned to you in the past, Nick. I would love to kind of have him on the show sometime. And I've got his cell phone number, and I was thinking about maybe giving him a holler and letting him know that we'd love to talk to him about the work that he does with kids, because he's certainly an inspirational guy.
Oh, I think we should definitely do that. Be a good platform for him to share his story with more people, and for us to hear his story again.
Yeah. Nick, one other thing I'd mention, a quote from Aristotle: educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all.
It's classic.
Yeah. So
Absolute
again, this
classic.
this is important. This is important work, and maybe now more than ever, because kids. We know this. The rates, especially since COVID, they were already bad, but they've been exacerbated by COVID. And so at this point, kids are suffering with depression and anxiety at unprecedented levels, kind of across the country. And a good bit of that is just the inability to manage emotions, right? And that's the work that school counselors are doing, is helping kids manage emotions. And when we do that, when we help kids to manage their emotions, I think we not only set them up for academic success, which is critically important, but we also end up setting them up for life success. Because if we're graduating kids out of 12th grade into the world and they're not able to manage and control emotions, those kind of things can easily result in substance abuse and addiction, marital discord, if not domestic violence, um, violence, all kinds of negative kind of outcomes when people don't have the skills to kind of recognize their emotions, articulate them, and manage them appropriately. So it's important work. Anybody who works with kids, kind of helping kids to manage emotions, is critically important.
No question. And looking at both of those, uh, both of the assets, they're tied inextricably almost. When you
Mm,
think about what's connected to both, it's almost as though 33 talks about the specific skills, and 34 is an acceptance and a comfortability with people who are different than them. I think is
yeah,
the easiest way to kind of like sum that up. And uh, a lot of people might argue that we look at college and the reasons people go to college. And on this show, I mean, I frequently say that college isn't for everyone.
yeah,
I think one of the benefits to a collegiate experience or a liberal arts experience is that you get exposure to people who aren't the same as you. And
yeah,
that can look a million different ways. And if nothing else, it's going to, if not lead to an appreciation, at least lead to a person's ability to conduct themselves in situations that they find to be unfamiliar, perhaps,
hmm,
or challenging in different ways. And looking back at the different experiences we've had, I feel like that's for sure what college did in many ways. So it's a difficult. I think it's difficult to really lock in on uh, what 34 fully means without recognizing that without some experience, you're not going to be able to achieve it.
yeah.
You can't live in a bubble and gain cultural competence. It's just not something. I don't think it's possible
Yeah,
in a lot of
but
ways.
Nick, we know that college is not for everybody, and not everybody's
Hmm.
going to go to college, and that's okay. But there are other ways to gain the cultural competence for
Oh,
sure. And, and
yes.
and if I could switch gears just for a minute, let me ask you the question: how about as a dad? You've got two girls, right, that you're raising, and how do you kind of address that as a father? What kind of experiences can you or do you provide to help them gain competence?
Yeah, not enough for sure. But and that's part of it's part of I think the limited, um, sometimes limited situation of being a co-parent. You know what I mean, and not having the girls all the time. However, they live in a community and they go to a school where there's over 400 different cultures represented. Um, so they are seeing people who are different from them in many ways, but also the same in a lot of other ways, just from a geographic standpoint. Um, uh, it's a great question, and it's one of the things I always beat myself up about. Is that one of the things I don't feel like we do enough of is provide opportunities to learn about different things, different cultures, etc. You know what I mean? Like we're very vanilla in the regard of um, going places and doing things and getting cultural experiences and whatnot. However, we do try to lay a foundation just when speaking, whether it's to the girls or sometimes maybe more importantly in conversations that the girls just might be within earshot of, where you're being respectful of other people,
Yeah,
um, and recognizing that our worldview might not be the only worldview. That's everyone has some importance in terms of uh, the way they live their lives and the way that from where they're from, whatever the difference may be. And it's kind of easy to not think about that or forget about that. You know what I mean? Like we spend so much time as
yeah,
educators trying to meet the definition of equity, whereas you get every person exactly what they need, to have a chance to succeed. Sometimes that's harder to do with your own kids, for sure. That's an area where you guys definitely do a much better job than we do.
I don't think so, Nick. In fact, when I asked that question, I was really thinking it's interesting that you answered it kind of from a deficit viewpoint, because I was thinking that was a strength for you, to be honest with you. That was my perception, is that you surround yourself with all different kinds of people. And your daughters see that, and you're you're a very open-minded individual, and I just see that as a positive, that you model that really well for your kids, and again, you take them lots of places, right? Especially with the camper now. I mean, it's traveling, it's going to different places, expanding their kind of minds and their thinking about different people and places, and gosh, I just feel like that's a strength.
All I can think of when you say that, Rick, I can't help but two examples jump to mind that again come from the deficit standpoint. In 2015 or so, I got contacted to be part of a theatrical pro wrestling show, where I was basically an announcer, a color commentator, a retired wrestler, and it was Danielle and the girls' first chance to see me perform, not in the ring, but, in a role, and, their first like wrestling show they got to go to. And it was so theatrical and over the top that one of the acts involved a tag team of zombies. And the girls were scared out of their minds. I'm like, well, good job, Dad. You literally have terrified your children with zombies. And then the second time was like 2019, right before the pandemic, and they came to Hazleton to see a reunion show of a lot of the guys I wrestled with back in the early 2000s. So I actually was wrestling, but it's a converted church into a stunt studio, and just a bunch of old guys in the ring. And you're talking about like these worthwhile experiences, and I'm like, I brought them to the middle of nowhere to watch old people fake wrestle.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, zombies. They're still terrified of zombies. Not that I'm delving way too far from the subject. We did Dorney Park a couple weeks ago, and they have like Scare Fest, like at the nighttime.
Yeah.
Bella went into like she was 3 years old again. Just terrified. You know what I mean? Like, you remember scared? You can remember what your kids look like when they're scared, and she literally turned into like the 3-year-old. It's the scared version. I'm like, oh my god, that's like when you were a baby, and now you're 15. No. You gotta love it.
Okay,
but yeah, I think to bring a wrap up on 33 and 34, obviously these two, it really speaks to the village piece to me. You know what I mean? Like, I think more than anything, I see that it's that community aspect of your family might not be able to give you all of 33 and 34, but your school, your other activities outside of school, your friends can really play a lot into developing those interpersonal skills along with that cultural competence, which again, like it's just so important in future life, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing I would add, I think I've already said it, but I think as parents, I think we can have a big impact on that cultural competence piece. Just by the way we talk about other people who are different, who look different, who act different, who have different worldviews, different political ideologies. So when we're talking to our kids, that we're talking so in a way that's open-minded and trying to understand people's differences and being curious about differences, as opposed to othering people and they're wrong, I'm right. That, and some people I think get a little carried away with that, and I don't think that does a service to our kids when we do that.
I like that term, othering people. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, that goes from some heavy situational talk there, Rick, to a lighter talk, which is our favorite segment on the show every week. Every rose has its thorn, and you picked this theme, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about it. But you have to introduce it because you came up with it. I mean, clearly.
Every rose has its thorn. Our topic for today, it's a serious one, or not so much. Air conditioning. Air conditioning. Nick, I'm thinking you had got some strong feelings on this, so I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Very strong feelings, and I can very easily summarize both the pros and the cons.
Huh.
The con is easy. Well, I shouldn't say con. The thorn. The thorn to this one is very simple. The only con to air conditioning is when it's not working. So when
Okay.
air conditioning breaks, that's the only time there's any kind of thorn for air conditioning.
Okay, I might disagree, but go ahead, keep going.
Okay. Air conditioning, when it does not work, when it breaks, you got to bring in an HVAC person. And unless you know an HVAC person, or you are one because you've been listening to us and you know that college necessarily isn't for everyone right away, and you could get your HVAC certification while still in high school and make a bajillion dollars, it's very expensive. And it's still hard finding parts and full units to replace air conditioning. So the thorn, definitely when it doesn't work. I'll give you a couple of the many, many, many rose smelling colored wonderfulness of air conditioning. It dehumidifies the air. And there's nothing worse than humidity for big guys, especially.
Yeah.
Humidity is terrible. Air conditioning feels good. You sleep better with air conditioning. The lower the room temperature, the better the sleep will be. That's why you don't sleep with socks, because you retain too much heat if you wear socks to bed. Air conditioning in a movie theater. Heaven on earth. You've got popcorn, you've got sound, you've got sight, you've got cool air conditioning. Literally the best thing ever. And now the newest acquisition to Roses for air conditioning is the camper, because when the air conditioning is running in the camper in such a confined space, it provides a tremendous white noise, which purrs me to sleep like nothing else. So those are just a few of the roses and the thorns, and I'm very, very curious now to hear you apparently have more thorns to air conditioning. So
well, I've got one other thorn. I agree with you. When it doesn't work, when it breaks, it's expensive, and it's also expensive to run, although worth every penny. So I'm not really going to consider that a thorn, right? The increased electricity bill. But Nick, we didn't have air conditioning in our dorm room 30 years ago, did we?
No.
Did the Res Hall did Geary Hall have air conditioning?
We might have to go back to some of our other Geary Hall residents, but I thought some floors did.
Okay.
And I don't think ours either year had air conditioning.
Yeah, I just can't remember either. But in the wintertime, and it's State College, Pennsylvania, so it gets cold, right? I mean, we'd have the windows wide open. It had to be it had to be freezing. And I remember freezing and being under my blankets and loving every second of it in that dorm room. Yeah.
With the fans going as well. Yep.
Yeah, that's right, with the fans going.
Oh man, that is for sure. Oh, good days.
Yeah, you did a nice job summarizing all the positives and all the roses. I've got one other thorn. Ready? It's when people have air conditioning, but they don't set it below 75 degrees. What's the point? You have it. You have to use it. It's like having a cheesesteak and not eating it. What are you doing? I don't, that upsets me when that, especially when I have to like sleep there. It just, oh my goodness! Please use the air conditioning.
You actually, that is the bigger thorn than air conditioning not working. And I'm just going to go soapbox for a second, because I don't know how I didn't think of this. I'm glad you brought this up. In our school district, which I love, during the summer months when it's only the secretaries and the principals in the building working in the office, they set the temperature at 77 degrees.
Oh, no.
77 degrees. I don't know any human that is comfortable in the summertime at 77 degrees. Right? Inappropriate. Also, we work till about 5 during the summer, but they shut the air conditioning off at 2. So 2 p.m., 3 hours, no air conditioning. By 3 p.m., it's pretty hot and humid in there. And now, I want to destroy people, because I know it sounds terrible.
But no, I get it.
I'm a creature of comfort.
Yeah, no, I get it. Wow.
Yeah, the helping professions, we might not make a ton of money. However, we have air conditioning, and we should use it. I'm 100% with you. We should use our air conditioning.
Nick, let me tell you one of my dreams. This is one of my dreams or life goals. Is to own a home where I have zoned air conditioning. so I can set different rooms at different temperatures. Do you guys have that in your house? Because we don't have that. Here.
There's 2 zones, so you have the upstairs and the downstairs.
Okay.
But you can't do it by room. It's just the
Yeah. So
bigger
we've got
unit.
upstairs and downstairs, but but I'd love to. I know some places you can set it by room, and that just sounds amazing to me to be able to set it by room. That sounds fantastic.
That sounds like the future. It doesn't seem real.
No, I think that is real. I think it's real, but I think you have to kind of get that
right.
when you build the house, right? It's not something you can kind of put in later. So maybe if you got a new house, so.
Man, we should just knock our current houses down and rebuild them for that feature.
I think it'd be worth it. Yeah. Maybe not financially worth it, but still worth it.
Yeah, air conditioning by itself is in general worth it. Before we move on from this topic, Rick, I think we should do something that we've never done on the podcast before, which is give away next week's Every Rose and Thorn, because it's such a divisive topic. I think people need a little time to think about it.
Great idea. Go for it, Nick. Yeah.
Next week's topic is going to be breakfast cereals. Cereals. And I don't know if you remember, Rick, but when we were in college, we established a hierarchy of breakfast cereal college rankings. And there were tier 1 colleges, tier 2 colleges, and tier 3 colleges. And each tier had a different offering of the best breakfast cereals. So just giving the people a little bit of a heads up that they might not want to miss next week's episode as we reveal what those tiers were, because it could really impact their future decision making if they're going to college or grad school, or it might change the way they think about their own college experience for the worse, perhaps.
Aye, Captain. Maybe a little hint there.
Oh, perhaps. Yeah, well, if you're lucky, you'll listen to next week's episode.
All right. That brings us to the mailbag, Nick. We got a question. I know we're kind of going kind of long here today, but we got time for one question to squeeze in. So you want to read that for us and we'll get a chance to respond.
So this is Patricia from North Carolina, and she asks, I am almost 50 years old and I've spent my career in banking. I want to be a counselor, but most of my friends are thinking about retirement, and I'm thinking maybe I waited too long for a career switch. What do you think?
Patricia, that's a great question. We get lots of great questions. That certainly is a great one as well. And I have a couple kind of reactions to this one. One is it's never too late. It's never too late if it's something that you feel called to do. You know, we've talked on the podcast before about that idea of calling, whether it's religious or otherwise, or meeting a need that exists in the world with your unique set of capabilities and skills. If you feel called to be a counselor, I don't think it's ever too late. I think for me, the question is, it's something that Nick has said from time to time. Is juice worth the squeeze? Is that what it is? Yeah. Yep. And so the question is, is it worth it financially for me to kind of take how many ever years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on what kind of a license you want to get to practice counseling? Is that worth it to you, the time and the expense? And it may or may not be. That's kind of up to you. You could do some kind of informal or lay counseling with a bachelor's degree, more in informal settings, but it wouldn't be you wouldn't be doing that with a license. It might be more like a life coach or something like that, but it still might meet the need for you to have to come alongside people and provide help and support. So I don't think it's too late, but I think the question for me is, what kind of counseling do you want to do? Because you may or may not need to go back to school for 3 years and get a graduate degree in order to do the work that you're being called to do. Thoughts, Nick?
I think that you touched on the calling piece, which is super important, obviously. However, there also is, and we don't know enough about Patricia to answer this part, so I would just offer these caveats to think about, Patricia, is that what are the other obligations you have in your life right now? So you're at almost 50 years old. Do you have children who perhaps are going to need to go to college? Is savings and financial obligations a consideration there? Your mortgage, your other bills, the way your lifestyle is, family commitments, all of those types of things. While that shouldn't be the be all and end all, it is reality. And there is a pragmatic part of these types of decisions where you have to ask yourself, like perhaps in your career as a banker, if you started working when you were 20 years old, you've been there 30 years. Do you have a 401k, or is there, what does your retirement look like? Are you solely relying on Social Security, or do you have other savings and earnings, or a partner perhaps who, also has, goals at this stage in the game? In terms of just age, though, and that's all you mentioned was age. So we can only really operate under the factor of that your biggest concern is that you're too old. Is that no, you're definitely not too old. In fact, I know people who are working well into their 80s now, doing things that they love doing. If you look at it from that perspective, or even just go a little younger than that, let's just say 75 or so, you've got 25 years. You could take the slow road, to getting that certification or that degree, through night courses, etc., while still, engaging in your current career and things like that. So, I'd hate to feel like, in any way we would, limit you. But if you've answered those other important questions, then, I would definitely say go for it if that's what your passion is, or that's what you feel like you're called to do.
Nick, those are all great points for sure. You mentioned the idea of, well, are there other kids that we, financially, do we get to pay for kids to go to college? And that's certainly something that important financial considerations for sure. But one other thing it made me think of is as a positive, when mom goes back to school at 50, amazing how she provides a model for her kids or for her grandkids, right? How possible it is and how hard work and determination. And I think that would impress lots of folks in your family. It takes a lot of courage to go back and do that. So, I work in a graduate program, and I would say I have lots of 50-year-olds in my graduate program going back to school to be counselors. So it's not uncommon. I don't think you'd be alone if you're in, it depends upon the program. Sometimes you have grad programs. A lot of residential programs or brick and mortars, you're going to have, 25-year-olds, a lot of them. But more of the online kind of approach, you're going to have a lot of adult learners. And again, that's very common for my program at Liberty. So that's something else to consider and think about.
Mm-hmm. Also, sometimes more interesting, right, Rick? You get people with more life experience. In a cohort like that, it's just a more rich environment as well.
It is, and, particularly for the helping professions and for counseling. A lot of not all folks, but a lot of folks who end up coming back to school, they've already raised their own kids. They have grandkids, and so they've got all these rich, relevant experiences. And particularly when they're going back to be a school counselor and work with kids, right? I mean, they've got so much life experience working with kids, seeing things go right, seeing things go wonky. It just kind of adds, I think, to their understanding and the way they conceptualize the material. So lots of positives there for sure.
Definitely. Well, we wish you luck, Patricia, whatever you decide, and be sure to keep us posted. Let us know down the line there. Well, Rick, we've come to the end of another episode. So much to look forward to next week between the breakfast cereal discussion that we know is coming and I believe 35 and 36, putting us into the late 30s of the developmental assets. Just so much to look forward to.
Absolutely.
As we get ready to close off, Rick, also lots happening this week, cultural based too, not real culture, more pop culture. You've got Ahsoka, the big finale coming up on Tuesday evening, releases on Disney at 9. We've got The Exorcist Believer releasing late Thursday night. New season of Chucky on USA launching Wednesday as well. So a whole lot happening in the pop culture world as well.
And if you're a sports fan, Philadelphia Phillies have game one of their playoffs on Tuesday. So by the time folks are listening to this, that series will probably already be underway. So I'm excited to be watching those games.
This is true. Do you have a prediction?
Yeah. I mean, it's a sweep for the Phils in this series against the Marlins. It's a sweep. Yeah, they've got home field advantage.
Going right at them. Yeah. My brother's going to be at the game tomorrow night, actually.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So hopefully I think he's going by himself too. I think he just went online and got the ticket as soon as he could when they.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, they've got Zach Wheeler going game 1 and Aaron Nola game 2. So we got our aces out there. So I'm expecting a sweep.
Absolutely. Well, we're hoping for all those things. All right. Well, thanks everyone for. Well, actually, we also I guess could ask Rufus, who already knows the results of this and
probably
dozens of other years of sporting events, but we just can't bet on them, unfortunately.
I know.
Well, with that being said, we'll see you next time. Visit us at excellentadventure.com on any of the social media platforms, and feel free to email us as well at excellentadventure@gmail.com.